Hi, it's Bumble. Welcome back to my channel. So I was really excited for this movie, not just because it's stop motion, and I kind of find that really interesting, but because because this is a prequel movie to a TV show called Frankelda Book of Spooks, where it's like these stories that are told by like a literal ghost writer, and they all have like these really cool creatures, and a lot of the stories end up being kind of like a life lesson or a careful what you wish for. But what I really liked with the show was that it's like in between it you get to see the writer and her like boyfriend, and they're stuck in this house and stuff, and he's like trapped in the form of this book. And then and it's kind of interesting, like you learn like bits and pieces about their situation at like the start and end of every episode, and that was just kind of way more interesting to me than like the plot of the actual episodes themselves. And then the final episode of the show is you finally get like Frankelda's origin story, and she tries to escape the house. It's like a big attempt to escape the house, and then she isn't able to. But I was like really interested in her character, and I was like actually hoping she'd be able to escape and stuff. And then I found out there was going to be a prequel movie, and I think it was only like a couple of months. It came out like a couple of months after I watched the show. I wanted to watch this like the day it came out, actually, because it was released on Netflix. But then that was when I was already going to be going out of town, and I didn't have access to my Netflix account. So it was weird, where it's like I could watch stuff on other streaming services, but I couldn't watch like one of the things I actually wanted to see. And it's been a while since I've watched the show, so as I'm kind of going through some of my notes, if I end up repeating stuff that I had said when I talked about the show, that's why. But also because some of the stuff from the final episode of the show, where it's like Frankelda's origins and like the beginning of the movie, are like pretty much almost the same, except the movie kind of goes into more depth, because it is kind of setting up for the situation of the show of like, how did she end up stuck in this house in the first place and everything. In terms of like my kind of general thoughts, since I literally just finished watching the movie like a couple of minutes ago, I just feel a bit disappointed, because there was a lot of things I really liked with it. I feel like I liked everything except for the characters and story, which is funny because that's what I was like most excited about in terms of watching the show, because it was really cool with the movie, where it's entirely like Frankelda's journey. You don't have really any of the stuff in the show of like, you know, the individual episodes where it's about like the different kids. It's just kind of focused on Frankelda, which I was hoping for, and that's really cool. And I like that a lot of the movie is spent, rather than being in like the real world, it's in the magic world, the realm of terrors and stuff, because it's a really cool setting. Honestly, I loved like the characters designs and stuff. I thought the voice acting was fine. There was sometimes where I was okay with it, and there was other times where it felt like the characters didn't really sound emotional, but it could be because this was like originally in Spanish and I was watching it in English. So I feel like, you know, in the language it's supposed to be, it probably like sounds better. The music was cool, because the TV show does have like musical numbers and stuff, and has a really cool title theme, which does get like sung again, I think like twice in the movie, which is kind of nice, actually. I think that was still my favorite of the songs. They have like whole like musical numbers and stuff. Some of them were pretty catchy. There was like a specific one when it's basically like the villain trying to convince everyone that the prince character is a traitor, that I know is probably gonna get stuck in my head for a while. I feel like I'm kind of mixed in the songs, where it's like I liked them, but I'm also just but like not enough where I want to save them to like my musical playlist or anything. But like I thought they were fine for what they were. So yeah, it felt like I liked everything except the characters and stories. It's more so of like the characters in that like their understanding of stuff, and the story, it's like it feels like it's simple, but then after a while it felt like a little bit confusing. I feel like I was left with a lot of questions still, and I was a bit confused with the ending. I wish I remembered how the show had ended. I don't remember if it's in like a similar way. Because even though I knew going into this that it was going to be a prequel to the TV show, so it would have to end somehow with like her, or at least part of the movie with like Frankelda trapped in the sentient spider house and stuff, I was kind of hoping that eventually it would like stop being a prequel and kind of be like an end to her story, because the way it ends, it still feels like kind of weird, where it's like her soul is like trapped inside of the house. She doesn't try to leave this time, I think, because that's how it has to be for like the TV series, but then her like physical body in the real world is able to like wake up and write her story and everything. So it was a little confusing to me if like she actually was able to leave the house that way, and how her consciousness is able to like go back to her body if she's supposedly stuck there. I think something else. Oh gosh, I wrote like a ton of notes in here. I don't think I'm gonna go through all of them. Plus, I'm gonna actually get interrupted in like a few minutes, so I'm gonna have to pause before I continue. Okay, so I'm back now. I don't think I'll get interrupted anymore. It was what I was going to. I just had to talk to my dad for a bit. So I'm not going to read all my notes, but just kind of some of the things I remembered. Like the main villain, he's the same as in the TV show, where it's this spider, this like giant green spider. And he's like the royal like nightmare maker or whatever, except that you find out he's actually kind of a shitty writer. And Frankelda's kind of brought in to potentially replace him and stuff. And I was wondering how he ends up becoming the giant house that you see in the TV show, where he's basically like already won and stuff. Like that's kind of how a lot of the movie goes, where it's not just Frankelda, her consciousness ending up, inside the realm of terrors and stuff, but also basically how the bad guy ends up manipulating things and winning. And that's like pretty much how it goes. He manipulates like pretty much everyone. The thing is, it just feels a little bit that some of the characters are kind of dumb, in that the main villain manipulates things so easily. It's not even funny of like specific people, mostly the bird guy and Frankelda, where he's like trying to pit them against each other, and Frankelda believes that like the prince has betrayed her, but she ends up believing this like multiple times, even when she keeps getting evidence like over and over again of like, hey, the spider guy is actually the villain. Like he even has like an entire freaking villain song and whatever, and his goal of like wanting to take over the human realm, and Frankelda is there like the whole time that song's being performed and everything, because it's like the main villain and there's these like 7 other monsters. What's pretty cool with them is not only they get to sometimes sing as well, but they're specifically the monsters that are from the TV show. You know how there's like a specific one for every episode, so it was actually kind of cool to see a lot of them again, and it was kind of nice getting to watch the show before watching the movie. But yeah, it's that the villain manipulates things so easily, but also that Frankelda just cannot put it together of like that she's not being betrayed. Like even at the beginning too, when the spider guy is like asking her for her stories, and she can see that because that was something I liked with the movie, is the prince. You get to see his backstory as well, and with his family and stuff, and kind of just more into the royal family, and the spider guy like works for them, and so like they can see that they're cautious of him and everything. That the spider. So you think Frankelda would be like bit more wary of this character. But no, so that was like a little, like, I know it kind of has to go that way because this is a movie where it leads into a plot where like the bad guy has to win. But the fact that everyone gets like so easily manipulated is almost like a little frustrating to watch. I just wish the characters were like a bit smarter, honestly. It was kind of nice seeing the prince and Frankelda's like growing relationship, though, that you do get to see what they're both like together. You know, and Frankelda gets to go into the realm of terrors with him, but like before they end up trapped in the giant house together where they actually get to like hang out and end up becoming a romantic couple. So I thought that was pretty nice, actually. And Frankelda, it's kind of sweet to watch. She gets so excited of being able to be in the terror realm and everything. And I do like the explanation where the residents of it exist as both like truth and fiction, in a sense, where it's like, yeah, she is writing about their work, like they are ideas made up by like humans and stuff as like their nightmares, but it's also that every time Frankelda's writing, she literally like peers into their world. So it's not really that they're like her original characters, but more so that like their world already exists. So like by the time she gets there, she's already really familiar with it, but also like really, really excited to see that it's actually real and everything, which I thought was pretty cool. Especially like she gets there and she has like a billion questions, which I feel like is not just because she's so excited about it, but also like she's a writer, she wants to know how it like actually operates and everything. Let me see. But it is kind of funny of like once you do get to see the realm of terrors and stuff, like in the show, it's like these children either being punished or having to learn lessons by, you know, they're being tormented by all these monsters and stuff, and then you get to see the monster world and it actually seems like pretty chill. Like not a lot of them are like evil or wanting to take over the human realm, they just kind of want to live their lives. It almost kind of reminds me more of like Nightmare Before Christmas a little bit, and it makes me wish we could have actually seen more of the regular town and not just like the castle and the plot stuff going on there. But yeah, I wasn't surprised at all. It actually took like way longer into the movie than I thought for the spider to, like, you know, he's gonna like start stealing Frankelda's stories. It's like pretty obvious. But the fact that he, because it's not just like he wants to stay as like the head nightmare writer or like taking over the human realm. I mean, taking over the human realm and crossing over is like his ultimate goal, but it's also that he's trying to like take over the kingdom from the royal family and stuff. So yeah, I was like expecting him to take over to steal Frankelda's ideas. But then he also manages to like convince all the monsters that like the prince is a traitor, because like I mentioned, there's like an entire song about that. That was one of the songs that kind of stood out to me, even though it does get like a little bit repetitive and everything. Where it's even that Frankelda believes that the prince is a traitor, even though it's like, the thing is like he has good intentions. He wants to use her stories, but it's to save the kingdom. Like you literally see throughout the movie that the king and queen are dying, and knowing that like the kingdom will disappear, the thing is he just doesn't tell her the truth about it. And like the one time he tries to, the villain ends up like twisting it and stuff. And then I thought that the plot at the end was going to end up being a bit different, where it's like Frankelda and the prince do still end up like trapped in the spider's house and everything, even if her like physical self is able to like write her story and everything. But then they do show other stuff where it's like I think she's like the embodiment of death or something, Lady Coyote. She does manage to save the king and queen, because they end up like immobile for like a lot of the movie. and then they're ready to, and that's why I thought like, oh, are they maybe potentially setting up like a sequel, maybe, where there's these like 7 traitors and the kingdom is ready to like find and fight them, even if it ends up being like the beginning of a war. And I thought, oh, that's pretty cool. And you see that like Frankelda's body, you know, she's able to go back to the human world and stuff, and that the prince's body is like basically treated like it's in a coma. I wasn't completely sure if he ends up dead or not, because his like soul ends up trapped inside of Frankelda's book, and it seemed like he was kind of dying of injuries. I wasn't completely sure on that. So it's like there's some things at the end of this that like aren't in details in the TV show, like the stuff with the kingdom, where I thought, okay, maybe that's gonna lead to something. They're gonna like track down the traitors, and maybe the king and queen are gonna be able to like defeat the spider or something, because that is kind of what I was hoping would happen with this movie. They were gonna find like some way to defeat him and like actually get to escape the house, even though again it's like a prequel, and you know they have to be stuck there. We can't have like a completely happy ending for the TV show to take place. But yeah, maybe could be setting up a sequel in other ways. I don't know. If not, it's fine. It's just, I don't know, with the story, I even when it ended, I wasn't sure if it was like kind of a loop as well, potentially, like that especially because it's like Frankelda writing her own story at the end, so I don't know if that means like everything has to happen again, or if it's like one of those things, because it does seem to have that message as well at the end of like, oh, as long as the story is written, the characters won't like truly die, which is like also kind of cool. I've seen that in a theme and like other stuff. So yeah, it's like I feel a bit conflicted on it, where it's like it was enjoyable as a movie and I was excited to see more of these characters, and I thought their world and the character designs and everything looked really cool. There was like a lot of stuff I was impressed by, but I felt like specifically the plot and character motivations were like a little bit weak, honestly. All right, that's pretty much it. Bye bye.